world. Hello and welcome. If you have not been here before, I'm Chelsea and this is Space Chat. I'm going to give everyone about 30 seconds to a minute to sound totally live. So I'm going to give everyone a minute or so to log on. You're here early, feel free to sound off down below, say hello. If you've been here before, welcome back. It's so wonderful. It's really, really lovely. The incredible community that we have here at Space Chat, all of you wonderful people here to learn, here to ask questions, and here to talk about space. Here to chat about space, dare I say. So again, I'm going to give everyone about 30 seconds or so. Just to log on, I want to give everyone a fair chance. They don't miss any of that good information. And in just a moment, we will be getting started. Excellent. All right. So let's see. All right. Excellent. It looks like all of the good live stuff is working and we are rolling. Okay. Awesome. So, everyone, thank you so much for logging on. It's been about 30 seconds or so. So I'm going to get into it now that everyone's gotten a chance to log on. So for those of you just logging on now, hi, I'm Chelsea. And this is Space Chat. For those who haven't been here before, this is the weekly show where I answer your questions about space and science live and explore what's new and what's really happening right now in space. So today I will be discussing this week's past space happenings, including Boeing's Starliner launch, which has now been indefinitely delayed, the continued craziness with Russia's behaving space module, SpaceX's Super Heavy rocket, and of course, the Perseids meteor shower, which is fast approaching its peak. So without further ado, let's chat and let's explore what's new in space. Now, it seems like I've been talking about Boeing's Starliner launch forever, and that's because Starliner has delayed yet again, this time indefinitely. Last week, if you tuned in or you've been following space news in general, you may have heard that Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, which is the company, it's their version of essentially SpaceX's Crew Dragon. They developed it with funding and support, like SpaceX, from NASA's Commercial Crew Program, and it was supposed to launch on Friday, but it got put on hold when Thursday morning, Russia's Nauka module, the nation's new but long-awaited science module, docked with the space station before unexpectedly firing its thrusters, causing the space station to kind of go into a tailspin. This scary situation, which was first reported as a 45-degree tilt of the station, actually caused the space station to spin 540 degrees, more than a full revolution around, and lose what engineers call attitude control. Not altitude, attitude control, which basically means that it was knocked out of its normal orientation or tilted, so pushed out of its normal space in space. Something that is not only unexpected and concerning, but actually extremely rare. So despite the fact that ground teams were able to very quickly get the station back in its right place, teams at Boeing and NASA thought it best to delay Starliner's launch to this week to give everyone time to fully sort out what was going on and stabilize the situation. However, on Tuesday, when Starliner was next set to launch, problems arose once again. During pre-launch preparations, Boeing engineers noticed an unexpected valve position in the craft's propulsion system. Clearly something that they do not want to move forward before fixing. Now, John Vollmer, who's the vice president and program manager of Boeing's Commercial Crew Program, said, humans and Boeing and NASA teams will take the time they need to ensure the safety and integrity of the spacecraft and the achievement of our mission objectives. So, in other words, NASA and Boeing are not going to rush this. They're not going to launch a spacecraft knowing that it has issues, knowing that there are concerns, knowing that there are problems or unexpected anomalies that should be looked at further. Now, it was said that perhaps Boeing might launch the next day, which was yesterday, August 4th, Wednesday. But the next day, they revealed that they needed more time to assess the situation fully and properly and ensure that any unexpected issues were fixed. So Starliner's launch was delayed indefinitely. Now, unfortunately, this is far from Boeing's first trouble with Starliner. This launch is actually the company's second try for an uncrewed flight test of Starliner. In 2019, they first attempted an uncrewed flight test with OFT-1. I was actually there for that launch in Florida, and it was pretty crazy. The craft, after launching, despite the launch going off without a hitch, had a number of issues and actually ended up in the wrong orbit. Not able to safely dock with the space station and ended up just circling Earth before landing down in New Mexico much earlier than expected. Now, while Boeing works to get Starliner together for a hopeful eventual test flight, which is a necessary step to launching humans aboard the craft, because if I did not mention before, the reason they're doing these uncrewed test flights is because they're planning on launching humans aboard Starliner. If you've been following space closely, you know that SpaceX has been launching humans to and from the space station with its Crew Dragon capsule. So Boeing plans to do the same with Starliner. So they really need to make sure that this flight test goes well so that they can be sure that when astronauts launch next aboard Starliner, they're going to be safe. So that's why there have been so many precautions and extra testing and extra making sure. They really, really want to be careful with this. Now, while all this is happening, it's actually not the only spacecraft that has had issues recently. Obviously, in addition to Nauka, Russian's module, which clearly was having some issues. Additionally, recently, GOES-17, an Earth monitoring spacecraft, suffered a glitch. Mission team members think that the craft suffered a memory bit error in its computer that put it offline. However, it was offline for less than 24 hours. And in about just 22 hours after the glitch, they were able to get GOES-17 back online, back at work, monitoring Earth, taking valuable data and observations. GOES-17, just in the last week, has been very hard at work, actually, monitoring Earth's wildfires, as wildfires continue to rage in Canada and the Western US. Also, recently, SpaceX has been readying its Super Heavy rocket, prepping its 29 Raptor engines and getting it to the launch stand in advance of an orbital flight test that will carry the SN-20 Starship prototype around Earth. So they're prepping this Super Heavy rocket to carry Starship as part of the larger Starship project for an orbital flight test. Now, the Starship system is the company's hope to get to not just space, not just in orbit around Earth, but the moon, Mars, and they've even stated beyond that, whatever that might end up being. In fact, Starship, or rather a version of Starship, was recently selected by NASA for its human landing system contract. In other words, NASA has contracted SpaceX to develop a Starship vehicle to land NASA's next astronauts on the moon. This has been highly contested by Blue Origin. If you've been on social media, they've been talking about it, as they were also in the running for that contract. However, NASA, as well as, the US government, have kind of doubled down and said, no, SpaceX won that contract. This is the funding that we have. And unless Congress gives us more funding to have someone else also build a lunar lander, this is what we have for now. A crazy situation. Now, among other strange spacecraft, NASA's Ingenuity Mars helicopter soared high on its 10th flight recently and began preparing for its 11th flight on the Red Planet. As the helicopter continues along, moving strong, doing really well on the extended leg of its mission. That was originally supposed to be fairly short, with just a handful of very small flights, but has been extended and continues to go on. And the helicopter continues to fly, test its capabilities, going higher, soaring for longer, going farther across the red planet's surface. It's safe to say that Ingenuity has done way better than even expected. This is not very uncommon for NASA spacecraft on Mars. We've seen many NASA spacecraft far exceed expectations on the red planet, but it is exciting to see Ingenuity follow in those footsteps. Now, this week, we also mark two major spacecraft anniversaries. Today, actually, August 5th, NASA's Curiosity rover on Mars celebrates 6 years to the day of being on the red planet. Also today, the agency's Juno spacecraft celebrates 10 years since launching to space, where it has spent its time traveling to and observing Jupiter and the whole Jovian system. Now, for those who prefer to enjoy space from the great outdoors, skywatchers, astronomers alike, this week, the annual Perseids meteor shower has started ramping up. It is upon us. Now, while the Perseids technically started all the way back in July 17th, they are finally ramping up towards their peak, which this year occurs August 11th to the 13th. Now, this is one of the most popular meteor showers to watch, and for good reason. This year, skywatchers can expect to see up to 60 meteors per hour at the shower's peak, though some years that number can be as high as 150 or 200 meteors per hour. Now, the Perseids are typically exceptionally bright. However, bright moonlight can sometimes make skywatching a bit difficult, so watch out for that if you're looking to spot them. Now, just a little background, the Perseids meteor shower is caused by the comet Swift-Tuttle. Every year at this time, in this time frame, Earth passes through the wake of the comet. And as we move through the densest, dustiest region of the comet's path, the little pieces feel free to drop your questions down into the comments below. Oh, my audio is out. 1 second. All right, let's see. Is my audio back? Oh, it seems that I lost. Look, when we're doing things live, things happen. Okay, great. We are back. If you missed what I said before, that is what has been new in space. Oops, sorry, just moving things around, making sure we are all set. All right, so that's what's been new in space. I'm turning it over to you. If you have not gotten the chance to ask a question yet, now is the time. So drop your questions down into the comments below, and I'll get through as many as I can. So as I finagle with this, let me start getting to your questions. Okay, let's see. Ooh, you guys already have some really good ones. Okay, Time Crystal asks on YouTube, what do you mean by attitude? Is this something angle related? So this is a great question. So attitude control, when engineers use that term, when people in space use that term, they're talking about the orientation of something in space. So whether it's a satellite or the space station or something out in space, you have to remain what's called attitude control. It has to be in a specific orientation. The space station doesn't just kind of float and twirl and spin as it wants. It's set in a specific orientation, a specific tilt, placement in orbit that is supposed to remain roughly the same for, of course, the safety of everyone on board, etc. And so, when we see something that says they lost attitude control, that just means that the space station or whatever object it is got tilted or spun in this case, or moved out of its orientation in some way. So it just means that it kind of got its orientation moved in some way. And in this case, it was because a Russian module started firing its thrusters when it was not supposed to by accident. It was actually trying to pull away from the space station right after docking, which is kind of crazy. Luckily, no one got hurt. None of the astronauts were in any danger at any time. Both Roscosmos and NASA have said, and everyone remains safe and things seem fine. But that's what that means. All right. Sweta on Facebook asks, how can I work for SpaceX? Their website, I'm sure, has some kind of job listing, job posting. I'm sure you can check that out on their site. And I know that SpaceX is always growing and doing new things. So if you, are an engineer or a communicator or any number of things, I'm sure they have something that may fit you. So check it out. All right, Piet asks on Facebook, Boeing will go on? Well, Boeing as a company seems like they're not going anywhere, of course. And NASA has invested quite a bit of money from its commercial crew program into Boeing's Starliner vehicle. I mean, Boeing and SpaceX were the only two companies that were contracted to build these astronaut taxis, so to speak. So SpaceX and Boeing got these big sums of money as part of this contract. SpaceX built Crew Dragon and has been flying it to and from the station with astronauts on it, but Starliner has yet to launch a successful uncrewed test flight, which comes even before any astronauts go on board for that test. So I don't think that I don't think it's the last we'll see of Starliner. I do think that we will see OFT2, the crewed flight test, or the uncrewed flight test happen, but I don't know when that will happen. It could be next month. I do not know. I know that their goal was to hopefully start launching astronaut crews by the end of this year. I think that if they get everything together and they can get that uncrewed test flight happening soon, fingers crossed, we should be in the clear to still be going forward with everything, but definitely it is concerning. So yeah, it's a little bit worrisome, but I have full faith. I know that the Boeing teams are working very hard. I know that after the first flight test had issues, they were very dedicated to making sure that they addressed every single possible issue that the craft could have had. So I think that this extended pause, extended delay is really because they really want to make absolutely 1000% sure that Starliner is 100 million% ready to launch. They do not want to chance that. And I have to respect that. I think that is a smart choice for something that is going to be launching humans. Sorry if that was long-winded. Oh, well. All right, on YouTube, let's see. Planet was... All right, someone says, good vibes, thank you. What if the coldest planet was built on the side of China and started orbiting that planet? Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I do not know what you mean by that. If you could rephrase the question, I'm sorry, I just do not know what you mean. All right, on YouTube, Asteria asks, can we finally get through harsh atmospheres like Venus? Well, actually, we have sent probes through Venus's atmosphere before. Actually, decades ago, there have been spacecraft to go through Venus's atmosphere. However, there have been none that have successfully landed on the planet's surface and survived. The planet is unbelievably hot and high pressure. So previously, spacecraft that have landed on Venus, which there have been very few of, but it has happened, have pretty much immediately perished because of that extreme temperature and extreme pressure that even if they could withstand the heat, would probably be crushed. Now, NASA actually recently greenlit 2 new spacecraft to visit Venus. So I'm very excited to see that happen. But yeah, Venus is a tough one. Venus is not easy, even for robots to survive. So yeah, pretty crazy. All right, Vesa asks, says no point not keeping Hubble also. I guess you're talking about the Hubble Space Telescope. Yes, Hubble is here to stay. I know that Hubble had some issues recently, which I discussed on a recent space chat. Hubble suffered a pretty serious glitch, actually. that I think they're still working through in some ways, but have gotten through the bulk of it. But Hubble is not retired. Hubble is not out of commission. James Webb Space Telescope, the new telescope, is set to launch this fall, fingers crossed. But while it might kind of be seen as the predecessor to Hubble, it's not directly replacing Hubble. They observe in kind of different ways and can both gain incredible information. So just because a new telescope's launching doesn't mean we're getting rid of Hubble. Unless there's a reason to get rid of it, no sense in doing so. All right. Piet asks, is there water on the moon? Scientists think so. Now, scientists think that there, the moon's south pole, if I'm remembering correctly, that there is water ice. And this is one of the reasons, actually, why NASA's Artemis program aims to land on the south pole of the moon, to not just study and explore this water ice, but also to see if it might be possible to one day use this water ice to develop fuel on the moon directly to launch from the moon to places and destinations like Mars. So yes, scientists do think that there is some form of water on the moon. This doesn't mean there are lakes or oceans, but that there are some water particles. What do I have to do to be an astronaut? This is a great question. There are so many different ways to become an astronaut today. Even just within the last 10 years, being an astronaut has changed tremendously, right? If we look to the 60s, to be an astronaut, you have to be a flight test pilot, flying experimental planes and jets. You have to be a very specific demographic, most likely. NASA didn't even let women apply until the mid 80s, if you could believe that. And even after that, the qualifications were very strict and not necessarily even very science focused. They were looking for people that could really fly. And today, that's changed. Obviously, we still have tons of pilots and amazing pilots in the astronaut corps, but we also have different types of engineers, scientists, biochemists, marine biologists, all different types of people. And especially now, as we're seeing this boom in commercial spaceflight, we're seeing an even larger variety of not just scientists and a larger variety of scientists, but all types of people. There have been previous programs to get teachers in space, to get journalists in space. And with commercial spaceflight, we are going to see more and more varieties of people going to space. We're going to see that really, really open up. So how do you become an astronaut? Study what you love, and really just apply to every possible opportunity and really be involved. If you're really excited about space, if you really want to get to space, you can make it happen. It's not going to be easy, though. All right. They also asked, did you ever meet an astronaut? Yes. Being a space science communicator and writer, I have gotten the privilege to meet a number of astronauts and talk to them. And every astronaut I have met has very thankfully been wonderful. And again, so much variety, so many interesting people, a lot of funny astronauts, a lot of quirky astronauts, a lot of artists, a lot of musicians in the astronaut corps, which is really, really exciting. All right. All right. Acelia also asks, how much of space have we explored so far? 1%. I don't know percentage-wise how much of space we've explored. We have sent, a couple probes past our solar system, just a little bit. But as far as humankind goes, we have not explored very far into our solar system even, let alone into space. So I think there's probably more than 99% of space that we have not explored in person, or even with robotic probes. There's so much out there. And as we know, the universe is ever expanding. Craig asks, will you go to space? I hope so, Craig. Who knows? Maybe they will reinstate the Journalist in Space program, or I'll just get really lucky. I've got a science degree and I've got a lot of space knowledge, but it's tough to get to space. Let's see. Piet, is the meteor shower visible all over the world? This is a great question. I'm not sure exactly where you are coming from, where in the world, what region, how visible it might be. A lot of places in the world, this is visible. And this is why it's so popular, is because not only is it very visible in many places, it's very bright. All right, Ali asks, how SpaceX can change Mars' temperature? Well, they haven't, and I don't think they can. This is usually something referring to terraforming or changing a planet in a way to almost make it like a different planet. Like people have said, let's terraform Mars to make it more like Earth. But the plausibility of that even being technically, scientifically possible is still contested. So we certainly are not doing it actively yet, at the very most. Right, Rohini, tell us about the Artemis mission in short. Sure. So Artemis, the Artemis program, is NASA's program to return humans to the moon. Their goal is to land humans back on the moon by 2024. I know, that's very soon. And with their first mission, they aim to land the first woman on the moon and the first person of color on the moon as part of that mission. And they hope that Artemis is not just sending people to the moon once and having them come back, but that it's actually a sustainable program to keep people going to and from the moon, to keep research going on the moon, and really have that be almost like a base for science and research and exploration. So that would be really interesting to see unfold. Man, you guys have some interesting questions. Flam7, what's wrong with CST 100, also known as Starliner? Well, there was an issue with a valve in its propulsion system. And so that's what they discovered on Tuesday. And that is what has delayed the launch indefinitely. Now, I hope that they can fix that, and I hope that it can launch relatively soon. But it really is yet to be seen. We're just kind of waiting on information to come out. I do have full faith in the Boeing team and their engineers. But unfortunately, with space is hard and things happen that you don't expect. And I think it's smart that they are really taking the time to fully investigate rather than rushing through and trying just to get this thing launched, which would probably be fairly irresponsible. Okay. Wow, you guys have so many good questions. All right. Priya on YouTube asks, what is the use of the Super Heavy rocket? So Super Heavy is what will carry SpaceX's Starship spacecraft to space. So it's part of the Starship system. There's the Starship spacecraft, and it's attached to that Super Heavy rocket, which is huge. It's super heavy. As the super obvious name dictates, it's got 29 Raptor engines, a lot of engines. And it's right now, they're doing all this prep to get it ready to basically do a flight test around Earth in orbit before it does anything like go to the moon or Mars or anything crazy like that. Okay, Victor has a great question on Facebook. Are there any kid-oriented channels or content I can sign my 7-year-old daughter up for? There is a lot of great space and science content out there that is not just appropriate, but specifically geared towards kids. I know that there are a few YouTube channels. My mind is kind of blanking at the moment. I will try to drop some things in the comments below later on. Occasionally, space.com, we do put out kid-oriented and kid-friendly specific content, which is always a ton of fun to do. But again, I will try to remember to drop that in the comments below. I know that there are a lot of, depending on what type of science or thing about space they're interested in, there's a lot of different things out there. And of course, one great way to get kids involved in space is through sky watching and astronomy. And the Perseids meteor shower is honestly a great, not just excuse, but a great tool to get kids involved in space, because all you have to do is walk out into your backyard and look up. Now, they'll have to use some patience because they might not see a meteor right away, but it really is a great way to get everyone involved in a way that's relatively easy, COVID safe, you can do it right at home, and family friendly. Okay, all right. Britt, I'm going to land and end on your question, just because it seems like a lot of fun. Do you think we will be able to time travel through a black hole to a new dimension? What do you think of Dr. Michio Kaku? I love Dr. Michio Kaku. He's an incredible physicist. I met him once. He was delightful, a wonderful, very sweet and generous person. Now, do I think that we could ever be able to time travel through a black hole to a new dimension, string theory? I think what you're talking about with regards to string theory is kind of traveling through what is known as wormholes, which are, imagine there are two black holes. And so black holes have this incredible amount of gravity, right? These two black holes start getting gravitationally attracted to each other, and they almost form this funnel. And the idea with wormholes, which we have yet to prove, discover, detect, observe in any way, shape, or form, but this is the theory behind them, is that if you went through one side of a wormhole, that you could essentially go out the other side, as space-time would be folded up because of those two black holes being so gravitationally pulled together. Like the blanket of space-time would essentially bend, and they would kind of connect in that way. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I genuinely don't. I think it would be really interesting to find evidence for it beyond just a theory, and explore that more scientifically. Do I think that we'll be jumping through black holes and jumping through space and time anytime soon? I don't think so, because it seems quite dangerous. But a very interesting question, and I always appreciate interesting questions. Thank you all so much for your amazing questions and participation. This, as always, has been Space Chat. Join me again live next week and every week. And as always, stay tuned right here at space.com to keep up with what's happening in space. And if you have a question I didn't get time to ask, or if you have another question, just like general about space and science, feel free to reach out to me or space.com over social media or